Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Um, in today's video, we're going to be going over something pretty morbid, something pretty major, something pretty extreme that's going to occur across across vast portions of the United States. Um, if you haven't heard, by the Storm Prediction Center and the National Weather Service, uh, a a prognosticated severe weather outbreak is expected to come to fruition. Um, it already started like 2 days ago and now is occurring right now. As you can see in big orange text, it says an enhanced risk of severe thunderstorms is forecast today and or tonight. And then it essentially just gives a summary of, certain risk. Severe thunderstorms capable of severe and damaging winds and large to very large hail likely this afternoon and evening centered across much Iowa. Isolated scattered severe hail. The damaging gusts are possible over a broader area from parts of the southern High Plains to the upper Midwest. You could see the enhanced risk. Mind you, the enhanced risk is orange. It's a 3 out of 5. Let's just go over really quickly what do you call it? The certain risk areas will be. So the light green shown for uh, Indiana and the lower portion of Michigan, even the upper portion. So from the whole state of Indiana to the whole entire portions of the LP and UP of Michigan, that light green there, that's called a general thunderstorm risk, and that essentially dictates that, some general garden variety showers and thunderstorms are expected to perturb the area, but nothing really of note or significance there. The green area, the dark green area, uh, that's, kind of bordering Chicago, also affecting Milwaukee and Green Bay, in Wisconsin. That's a marginal risk, and that represents, yes, that's basically saying, hey, some thunderstorms, are going to potentially spawn, and they may be capable of isolated wind damage, uh, some isolated hail, and maybe even a very small, brief spin-up tornado or two. But nothing of too big of proportions. Nothing of substantial proportions. It's nothing horrible. Uh, but yeah. So, so yeah, that's the marginal. The slight is everything painted in yellow that is a slight risk. Say 2 out of 5. The marginal risk was a 1 out of 5. Um, uh, damn, sorry. The slight risk essentially is painting a picture, and it's essentially telling that thunderstorms are indeed capable of producing some uh, tornadoes, potentially significant, uh, large hail, potentially significant, and potentially significant damaging winds as well. So the threat has definitely amped up. However, what's more of an amping up is transitioning to the orange risk, the enhanced risk, that contains most of Iowa, excluding like the edges of Iowa. If you live smack dab in the middle, you're primed for severe weather in Iowa. That you're in the orange risk of severe weather, the enhanced risk level 3 out of 5. It essentially means that either a severe weather outbreak consisting of very large hail and very damaging winds, or a potential tornado outbreak with EF2 plus tornadoes are expected. Maybe even EF3 plus tornadoes, uh, depending on the setup. Now some there are two more levels after the orange risk. Number one is a red painted zone. It's called a moderate risk of severe weather. That essentially I don't know why I said essentially, more than twice. But the moderate risk essentially it's painting a very morbid picture when a moderate risk is issued. Either there's going to be a very major severe weather outbreak, uh, or a very major tornado outbreak, uh, or both like combined because certain hazards, they just kind of well they just kind of spawn, and it's very sad, very unfortunate to see all of the tornado deaths that have occurred in moderate risks. Very tragic, very sad. Uh, and then there's the 5 out of 5, the big daddy of risks. We call it the mother load. It's the high risk. And the high risk, you never ever want to see a high risk area demarcated on any state. Hell, we've had high risks. We've had one high risk for New York and Pennsylvania, New Jersey. May To be honest, I'm completely forgetting the date. No, May 31st, 1998. May 31st, 1998, there was a high risk for New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. That was the only high risk that was ever recorded in the Northeast. There have been high risks across the East Coast. There have even been high risks for the Panhandle of Florida, and there have been high risks in the Southeast, Dixie Alley. There have been high risks for Arkansas, Louisiana, Texas, Oklahoma, into the plains and into the Midwest. Also into the northern regions and the Great Lakes. So there have been high risks everywhere, but not really all the places. Um, but yeah, the high risk essentially it means that uh, places could be completely wiped off the map. Now, with the Storm Prediction Center's, infantile, what do you call it? Infantile transition from, you know, just basic standard forecasting to like conditional probabilities and everything like that, conditional probabilistic outlooks. They've transitioned to a new formatting, which is why you see SIG 1, SIG 2, and SIG 3. Uh, that's why you see that. It's because they transitioned their format, and now they're doing it a different way. So theoretically, derechos could pose an actual high risk threat if derechos like August 20th or August 13th, 2020 or something like that. Uh, Actually, no, August 10th, 2020. My bad. If derechos like August 10th, 2020, or like June 29th or June 27th or June 28th, 2019 or something, the Mid-Atlantic derecho is actually in 2012. I'm sorry, I'm just really tired today. The Mid-Atlantic derecho that went through Pennsylvania, New Jersey, that happened in 2012, or the very famous or infamous Cedar Rapids derecho that 127-mile-an-hour wind gust at Cedar Rapids Airport. If that were to ever happen, that would be that would pose a high risk threat. Also, if a major tornado outbreak, like let's say, God forbid, March 31st, 2023, or April 27, 2011, I know those aren't really comparable, but you know what I mean. If one of those was ever prognosticated, a high risk would unequivocally be issued, and it would absolutely be mayhem for those places, those counties, and those states. But hopefully, we won't have to see any of those in the future. However, what what I'm seeing today screams tornadoes for this whole outbreak. So I'm classifying this as a tornado outbreak because uh, tornadoes are unequivocally prominent, and hope no tornadoes spawn, hope things bust or whatnot, because you never want anybody to get hurt. But the weather will be the weather, and the weather will want to cause as much harm as possible because that's really all it can do sometimes. So again, like I said, here's the enhanced risk of severe weather day one outlook for today. Uh, the enhanced risk outlook is just for a very large portion of Iowa, just Iowa. Um, there are two slight risks. One slight risk from Wisconsin all the way to the Oklahoma, Texas Panhandle, and another slight risk that's truncated and dislocated from the The main slight risk is also in the Texas Panhandle, just in the southern part of the Texas Panhandle, into some of the Texas country area. Lubbock, not Lubbock, but Amarillo and places like that. And then there's a marginal risk extending from the UP of Michigan to the kind of Mexico border. Let's say the Mexico border. The UP of Michigan to the Mexico border. That's for today. Uh, for a tornado outlook, there's a 5% unhatched risk of tornadoes. So there will definitely be a risk of tornadoes today. However, these tornadoes are not expected to be particularly strong in nature and will likely be either around or below EF2 level intensity. But there always can be outliers in certain situations. An EF4 tornado could theoretically spawn, but I hope it doesn't. Um, but the Storm Prediction Center is not really forecasting very strong tornadoes, but there are higher frequencies prognosticated with the environment and everything. The wind risk, one of the reasons why there's an enhanced risk that is being perpetuated. Um, there is a 30% hatched risk of wind for Iowa. Uh, it's really kind of like the same regions, like the wind, you know, certain sometimes I really shouldn't have to go over certain risk zones because they're like the same, like from categorical to like the hazardous outlook, they're kind of the same. So I shouldn't really have to reiterate or repeat things. Um, you know, 30% hatch risk for Iowa, 15% hatch risk from Wisconsin to the Texas Panhandle, and then the 5% hatch actually goes into actually New Mexico, and it nears but doesn't get really close to the Mexico border. And then did I say hail? Wind. And then this is the hail outlook. Uh, really same thing, basically. Nothing new. So, since this is the 20 UTC or 20Z outlook, I'm going to be reading the 20Z update. However, I will read the previous discussion, which is the 1630Z outlook. I'll be reading that first in chronological order, and then I'll be reading the 20Z update. So I got some stuff to read. I like reading, so. Central Plains into the upper Midwest, including Iowa. A cyclonically influenced, moderately strong belt of westerlies will exist over the northern plains to the upper Midwest and the upper Great Lakes. The primary surface low will remain in northern Ontario, with a trailing cold front extending southward into the upper Midwest and northern and central plains. A secondary surface low will exist across southwest Kansas and northwest Oklahoma around peak afternoon heating, with a dry line extending south-southwestward from this low across much of the southern High Plains. Continued expectations are for robust thunderstorm development along the cold front and surface trough from eastern Nebraska into Iowa to be delayed until late afternoon or early evening, around 22Z to 0Z, as large-scale ascent will remain weak until a low-amp shortwave trough embedded within the westerly mid-level flow eventually overspreads the surface warm sector. Continued low-level warm moist advection through the day and diurnal heating will contribute to the development of moderate to locally strong instability, i.e. over 2,500 joules per kilogram of ML Cape, across this region by early evening. While low-level winds are forecast to remain fairly modest, enhanced mid to upper-level flow will support sufficient, i.e. 35 to 50 knots, of deep layer shear for updraft organization. Isolated supercells should pose a threat for large to isolated very large hail, 2 inches plus in diameter, before likely quickly going upscale this evening across Iowa with an increasing potential for scattered severe/damaging winds. Some of these gusts could exceed 75 miles per hour on a localized basis given the expectation for an organized cluster and ample instability. A tornado or two could also occur this evening as low-level shear gradually increases with a strengthening low-level jet. Southern high plains. While clouds linger at midday, particularly with southward extent across west-southwest Texas, robust daytime heating uh, will yield a very well-mixed and deep boundary layer near and south of the secondary surface low over southwest Kansas and northwest Oklahoma. Uh, Mid-level temperatures will remain cool enough to support at least weak instability, even with the modest low-level moisture and surface dew points. A weak mid-level shortwave moving from the southern Rockies into the southern high plains will enhance large-scale ascent late in the day. This should support the development of high-based thunderstorms with the occasional strong to severe wind gusts expected. Latest short-term guidance suggests a more probable zone of thunderstorm-related gust potential may focus across the Texas South Plains and low rolling plains. Isolated gusts of 70 miles per hour or greater may occur given the very deeply mixed boundary layer extending up to around 500 millibars. Cells that develop in west-southwest Texas may also contain some hail with elongated hodographs in the mid to upper levels. And the 20Z Outlook update. Several areas of thunderstorm development are expected this afternoon and evening across the Central Plains and the Midwest. Moderate instability beneath 40-plus knots of mid-level flow will promote a mixed mode of supercells and eventually linear clusters. Hail, some over 2 inches in diameter, along with damaging wind gusts, appear likely, with the more robust supercells initially along the cold front across Nebraska and northern Kansas, and farther north along the warm front into southern Minnesota. Eventual upscale growth into one or more linear clusters should favor an increase in the threat for damaging wind gusts and a couple of tornadoes over parts of Iowa, Illinois, and southern Wisconsin this evening, eastern New Mexico and Colorado, and the Texas-Oklahoma panhandles. Initial high-based shower and thunderstorm development is underway, coincident with very strong heating and the arrival of a weak upper-level shortwave atop the well-mixed air mass that is west of the dry line. With mixing depth of 4 to 5 kilometers below modest buoyancy, strong to severe wind gusts are possible with these showers and thunderstorms across the southern high plains. Wind probabilities were shifted slightly west. See mesoscale discussions numbers 723 and 724 for short-term information. Okay, that was a lot. But we have a lot more to read. Obviously, a severe weather outbreak is multiple days of severe weather. And it doesn't just stop here, because we have an enhanced risk for tomorrow. Yes. Sorry, I was I'm just briefly scanning through because I haven't seen this update yet. Yeah, we have an enhanced risk tomorrow, Saturday, for portions of southwest Nebraska, northwest Kansas, and a very small fringe of northeastern Colorado. Colorado doesn't usually see severe weather, and usually low pressure systems are precipitated from Colorado, and they move into wherever they move to. If they move to you know let's say Nebraska, they move to Nebraska. If they move to Oklahoma, they move to Oklahoma. If they move to like Minnesota, they move to Minnesota. It depends, on the setup and everything. But usually Colorado doesn't see severe weather, and usually they just get high wind warnings and stuff like that. So yeah. So there's also a slight risk extending from northeast Colorado through Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, Iowa, and Missouri. And then the marginal risk extends from the Rockies all the way down to the southern plains, into the Midwest, the Great Lakes, and the Ohio Valley and the Mid-Atlantic regions. Yes, the whole state of Indiana is under a marginal risk of severe weather, meaning that Indiana, including Fort Wayne, Gary, Indianapolis, and Evansville, could potentially see some severe weather tomorrow. Chicago is also in the marginal risk, So from Chicago to Rockford to Bloomington to Peoria to Springfield, Illinois, y'all are probably going to see severe weather. So, anyways, let's get to it. So, there's a 5% risk of tornadoes extending from, basically near that same region, southwest Nebraska to northwest Kansas and northeastern Colorado. And then a 2% extending from Colorado to Nebraska to Kansas to Iowa to Missouri. And that's it for the tornado threat. Nothing really much. The wind threat is what's perpetuating the enhanced risk, uh, as well as the hail. But usually wind threats are usually bigger than hail threats unless stated otherwise. So really enhanced risk looks all the same. The marginal risk looks all the same. So does the slight risk. It looks pretty good. And then the hail risk it's a little bit different, but same regions. Highest threat is Colorado, Nebraska, and Kansas, and so there's a hatched risk on the wind and the hail as well. The hatched risk of wind extends towards Iowa. The hatched risk of hail it extends towards Texas. So there's a marginal risk from the Colorado-Utah border to the Ohio-Pennsylvania border and West Virginia. So from end to end of the United States. Not not necessarily from end to end, but you kind of get what I mean. Alrighty. So, here we go. Summary. Severe thunderstorms capable of large to very large hail, wind damage, and perhaps a couple of tornadoes will be possible Saturday afternoon and evening across parts of the Central Plains. Scattered thunderstorms will also pose potential for strong to severe winds across the lower to mid-Missouri Valley, Central Plains to the Ohio Valley. Amplification of the pattern will occur this weekend as a mid-level trough digs south-southeastward over the northern Rockies and Great Basin, with downstream Lee cyclogenesis expected in the vicinity of southeast Colorado. Within the warm sector of the cyclone, an influx of mid to upper 60s boundary layer dew points will persist from Oklahoma into Kansas into the lower Missouri Valley and the Ohio Valley. Remnants of Day 1 convection could be ongoing at the start of the period across parts of Missouri and Illinois, with the possibility of a mesoscale convective vortice moving eastward during the day across the Ohio Valley. Isolated wind damage and large hail will be possible with loosely organized clusters during the day into the Ohio Valley. Isolated severe thunderstorms will also be possible during the afternoon along the outflow reinforced front across northern Missouri. The primary severe threat is expected to increase Saturday afternoon and evening, starting in northeast Colorado and spreading eastward into Nebraska and adjacent areas of northwest Kansas. Upslope flow north of the Lee cyclone and westward advection of low-level moisture beneath steep mid-level lapse rates will result in moderate to large buoyancy near the warm front. Storm initiation is probable by mid to late afternoon in northeast Colorado, and storms will subsequently spread eastward towards southwest Nebraska and northwest Kansas. Wind profiles with long hodographs will favor supercells capable of producing very large hail, up to 3 inches in diameter. Low-level shear and moisture will become sufficient for a few tornadoes as the storms move farther east towards the Colorado-Kansas-Nebraska border region. Upscale growth into a cluster and mesoscale convective system will also be possible Saturday evening, with an increase in the potential for severe outflow gusts of 65 to 80 miles per hour. Farther south, thunderstorm development along the dry line is more questionable given a warm elevated mixed layer and, at best, weak forcing for ascent. Still, hot temperatures and deep mixing could support isolated high-base thunderstorms with the conditional threat for large hail and strong outflow gusts. Also, if you can see on my Discord notifications, the Storm Prediction Center has just issued Severe Thunderstorm Watch number 204 for the Texas Panhandle and eastern New Mexico. That's for today. Alrighty, so that's that for tomorrow. let's go to Sunday. This is Sunday's risk. Now, Sunday is a big concern here because it's a significant ramp up from Saturday, from tomorrow. It's the kickoff to really one of the worst severe weather slash tornado outbreaks we could potentially see all year. Signals are really stout and substantive, and they really are telling a different story from what we originally thought. Oh, it wasn't gonna be that bad. You know, a couple of days ago we were thinking that it was not going to be that bad. Uh, However, we are fairly proven wrong. Obviously, as meteorologists always are, they're always proven wrong sometimes. And with wording from the Storm Prediction Center, it's very concerning what they have to say. But yeah, let's dive into this. So this is Sunday's severe weather outlook. There's an enhanced risk of severe weather from, uh, you know, extreme northern Kansas to Nebraska to North Dakota, or sorry, South Dakota to Minnesota and Iowa, and then a slight risk extending from the Texas and Oklahoma panhandles all the way through the plains, through basically all of Iowa into the Great Lakes region and the northern plains, and then the marginal risk extends from the Canadian border all the way down to the Texas Hill Country and the low rolling plains and stuff like that. Uh, so it's going to be a pretty significant day on Sunday, and I would not be surprised to see tornadoes occur on this day. But I would be even more surprised if I didn't see tornadoes on Mondays. This is the categorical outlook. Probabilistic outlook is the same as the categorical outlook, except hatching is now being introduced. The hatching runs from just near Minneapolis and St. Paul, all the way down to the Texas Panhandle, and yeah, so we don't really have to see anything else because the categorical and probabilistic outlooks are the same. It's just that the probabilistic outlook delineates like hatching, sig 1, sig 2, sig 3, sig 4. Well, sorry, not sig 4. I don't know where I was going with that. Just sig 1, sig 2, and sig 3. It just delineates that basically. Uh, Hold on. I will be right back. I I know you're heading home. I'm recording, so okay, okay, bye. Hello, I am back. Apologize about that. So like I said, enhanced risk from you know, let's just say for simplicity's sake, the Nebraska-Kansas border all the way up to Minnesota and Iowa, and then the slight risk goes from the panhandles of Texas and Oklahoma to the Great Lakes region, and the marginal risk extends from the Canadian border to the low rolling plains in Texas. So, summary. Severe thunderstorms are expected Sunday afternoon into Sunday night from portions of the Central Plains into the upper Midwest. Supercells with very large hail and tornadoes are possible before an upscale of storm growth leads to an increase in the wind damage threat. Synopsis. The primary mid-level trough over the northern Great Basin Sunday morning will progress to the Four Corners by Monday morning. A subtle lead shortwave trough, now over northern California, will eject northeastward during the day from New Mexico to western Kansas and central Nebraska, and it will reach Minnesota by early Monday. A weak reflection of the initial Lee cyclone will likely move north-northeastward across Nebraska to Minnesota along a pre-existing barrel clinic zone. The boundary layer will consist mostly of roughly mid-60s dew points east of the dry line and south of the warm front Sunday, while the fully modified maritime tropical air mass will return to Texas through Sunday night. Nebraska to Minnesota. The elevated remains of overnight convection across Nebraska and Iowa and an associated mesoscale convective vortice should move northeastward towards the upper Mississippi Valley and weaken. In the wake of early convection, surface heating and cloud breaks will contribute to destabilization, and storm development will become probable by Sunday afternoon and evening along the stalled front in Nebraska in advance of the weak surface cyclone and a subtle ejecting mid-level trough. Mesoscale details are fairly uncertain this far in advance, but still, the forecast environment appears favorable for initial supercells with very large hail and tornadoes, and some increase in the threat for damaging winds as convection grows upscale along the front and spreads northeastward into southeast South Dakota, northwest Iowa, southwest Minnesota, and more through Sunday night, and western Kansas to the Texas Panhandle dry line. A relatively warm, elevated mixed layer, and no obvious forcing for ascent, both suggest that storm initiation will rely on sufficiently deep mixing along the dry line, and that storm formation is very much in question. If a storm or two forms later afternoon and evening before the dry line retreats overnight, there will be a conditional threat for supercells with large hail. So that is for Sunday's risk. Um, Sunday looks pretty bad, but Monday. Oh my God, Monday is absolutely terrifying. Monday looks so much worse. It really does. And people are actually saying that there could be a day 3 moderate off the bat. That's how bad it is. The North American Mesoscale model, which unfortunately is a model that will be retiring, said it pulled an insane, crazy model run with the hodograph literally facing north and then turning sharply east. That is just That's wild. And the critical angle was exactly 90 degrees, which means that, in that specific model run alone, significant tornadoes that are very long tracked and very strong should form and develop. Now, does that mean that there will be significant tornadoes? I mean, to be honest, I really don't know. I mean, that's just one model sounding alone. And so, you know, there are, a ton of other idiosyncrasies that we have to deal with. So, we can't just bank on it and say that multiple long track tornadoes are going to happen. We just have to take things with some grains of salt until we can rule out those grains of salt. Uh, so, uh, yeah, this is Monday's outlook. There's a 30% risk of severe weather extending from Oklahoma to the Wisconsin-Michigan border, and a slight risk equivalent, 15%, extending from what do you call it, Texas to Michigan, and almost to Detroit, but not quite there. I believe the whole entirety of Lake Michigan is under a 15% slight risk equivalent of severe weather, but who really knows at this point? And then that's for Monday. This is for Tuesday. Tuesday, it's much more tame and it's much more consolidated and localized. So Tuesday's severe threat should, hopefully not be as great as Monday's severe threat. So let's get into both threats. Severe weather outbreak is possible on Monday. Discussion. Monday, day 4. A severe weather outbreak will be possible from Monday afternoon into the evening and overnight period. On Monday, the western trough will take on a negative tilt before ejecting across the central plains, with a strong southwesterly flow aloft overspreading the region. This will result in strong lee cyclone development across western Kansas. A surface cold front will extend northward to a secondary surface low across the upper Midwest. A dry line will extend southward across portions of western Kansas into western Oklahoma. Numerous thunderstorms are expected to develop along and ahead of the cold front and further south along the dry line Monday afternoon and evening from Nebraska into central Kansas. Given the volatile air mass ahead of these features, with moderate to strong instability and strengthening deep layer shear, initial development will likely be supercellular. Initial supercells will pose a risk of all hazards, including very large hail, large to very large hail, damaging winds, and tornadoes. This is the scary part. Initial development will likely be supercellular. Initial supercells will pose a risk of all hazards, including very large hail, large to very large hail, damaging winds, and tornadoes. This is the scary part. This is the scary part I want to talk about. As the southwesterly low-level jet increases into the evening, which is a natural phenomenon in the low levels where winds come from the south and advect north, creating more wind shear. As the southwesterly low-level jet increases into the evening, large clockwise enhancement of low-level photographs across portions of central Kansas into northern Oklahoma may lead to an increasing risk for strong to intense tornadoes. So strong to intense tornadoes are mentioned actually in this, and additional thunderstorm development, will spread in tandem with the cold front from the Central Plains to the upper Midwest through the evening, with the potential for more widespread damaging winds and a few tornadoes, some of which may be strong. Wow. Jesus. Tuesday, day 5 to Thursday, day 7. Severe potential is expected to continue Tuesday as the cold front extends from the upper Midwest to the southern plains. Strong to moderate instability ahead of the front will continue to support severe thunderstorms from the northern part of the southern plains northeastward into the mid-Mississippi Valley. Trends are for the front to shift eastward faster than originally expected, and as such, probabilities were shifted eastward with this update. Strong to severe thunderstorms may extend further north into the Northeast and Great Lakes region. Wow. Uh, on Wednesday and Thursday, the cold front is forecast to move southeastward across the southern plains and mid-Mississippi Valley, extending east-northeastward into the mid-Atlantic. A severe threat could develop along and ahead of the front each afternoon and evening. However, uncertainty concerning the exact location of the front is substantial at this extended range. To be honest, I have no words for Monday. All I really have to say is be prepared. Be prepared for something vicious, as the weather will absolutely not back down. Alrighty. Have a great day, everyone. Keep on trucking.